Take some time to silence your phones, your watches, your superfluous family members, and be present, fully present for this event. Those that cannot be present are joining us online. If you would take a minute and wave to the online folks. We are also so happy that you're here. My name is Tom Lawrence. I am a low-level fork and spoon operator in the festival. It just says staff, which is good, but I do want to spend some time thanking some important people here. We'll get to the storytellers in a moment, but first and foremost, let's thank the Ridges staff for this beautiful venue. There are a couple ways we can do thanks, with applause or the way we're doing it. Let's go with the former. So let's thank the Ridges staff, please. We are really grateful to have this venue and a lot of the behind the scenes folks. Andy, who was refilling the water. If you bought food, you probably bought it from her. Lauren, who was solving problems behind the scenes. All the people that took out trash. That all happens by real people. Definitely want to thank Susie, Cora, and Jamie, our sign language interpreters. You'll see them cycle through on stage. They are gifted, skillful, and high endurance human beings. Once again, Nathan Barish, the man behind the camera, who's in the back. And our sponsors in the program, the second half of the program, which is available on our website if you're not here in person, the whole second half of this are sponsors. Those sponsors did not buy ad space. They just put money toward the festival and were rewarded with ad space because we wanted to represent their involvement. Dovie has said a couple of times this week that storytelling festivals in an ideal sense are built from community. That's you, that's this community who gave money, who gave food, who gave merchandise, who gave space to allow this to happen. And we want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you for putting your money toward this, your time toward this, your attention toward this, your energy toward this. You are our reward. The gig is the payoff. And we're so grateful that you came for us. Oh. The festival is also supported largely by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Georgia Council for the Arts. That's federal and state money, which is at times iffy, that is coming our way to provide arts to rural North Georgia. So why is this important? This is the nuts and bolts talk of this intro, and then it will stop being the me show and we'll get on with the real show. The Virgin Mountain Storytelling Festival is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no employees, we pay no salaries. Everybody here is a volunteer, and I mean that. All of us in the green shirts, behind the scenes, on the stage, under the stage, we're all volunteers. Nobody is doing this for any reason other than they believe in it. We are isolated here in Towns County and North Georgia geographically, economically, and through other demographics as well, age and ethnicity. This is a Title I school district, as is Union County, as is Clay County, as is Cherokee County. For those of you that don't know what a Title I school district is, that means that at least 40% of the students get free lunch. In Union County in particular, I can't speak for the others, there's one school who gets 100% free lunch. In this area, more than 20% of children live below the poverty line. However, because of the type of festival that we are, we have been able to, in person and online, provide tickets to over 1,000 students and teachers for free, just like we do every year. When you hear the word inclusion, however people may want to label it, that's what inclusion means. And E-word, I'm losing it. Roland, what's the E word? Enthusiasm, that's the one. We want to enthusiastically support arts for all. That's why we do it. And I do think that deserves some applause. moving right along to the real show. Let's go ahead and bring up our performers for the final Olio of the 2025 Georgia Mountain Storytelling Festival. We're going to begin with a longtime friend of the festival, Bill Lepp. We could say a whole lot about Bill Lepp, but I really want you to focus on he's got stories upon stories. He's got books. He's got recordings. He's got a television show. He's been on the radio, all of which are buried under the mountain of awards he's won for all of these things. Bill is the epitome of himself. I don't think I can say much more than that. Please welcome to the stage, Bill Lepp.
So, Paul and Mo and Ray and me showed up at a storytelling festival a while ago. Dovie was off doing something culturally significant and doesn't get to be in this story. And it turns out that when you do a festival, they send you this thing. It's called a contract, and it tells you what you're supposed to do, and then you sign the bottom. Well, I never read anything except where it says signature, so I never know what's going to happen. We get to this festival, and it turns out that the four of us not only have to tell stories, but we're in charge of a cabin with 114-year-old boys in it. So imagine the cabin was about as long as this room, but the door was in the middle. So you walk in, there's a little foyer, there's some benches, and then on either side of that foyer, there's a wing, and in each one of those wings, there's 25 bunk beds. And then you pass through another door, and there's an area maybe half as big as this stage. And there's a door in the middle, and a bunk bed on this side, and Ray was sleeping in the bottom bunk over here. I was sleeping in the top bunk. Mo was sleeping in the bottom bunk over here, and Paul was sleeping in the top bunk. So that was our little cabin. And then there was a screen door at the back that we could go in and out of so that we didn't wake up the kids. Well, one day Mo cut her finger, and she cut it so bad that we had to take her all the way over the mountain, and she had to get stitches, and they put her on painkillers. And we brought her back, and we were helping her up the back steps. Well, okay, we weren't helping her because the steps were uneven, and she was on painkillers. And it was fun to watch her try and negotiate these stairs. And she fell, and she had just enough sense to know that this hand was damaged, so she put it behind her back. And she went to stop herself with this hand, and these two fingers bent all the way back. Yeah, it's neat to see happen to somebody else. And then, because you're like, ooh, can the human body do that? And then you're like, oh, not successfully. So then we had to take her back over the mountain. They put her in a splint. They put her on more painkillers. So this time, right, fellows, we did help her up the stairs because it was almost supper, and we didn't want to miss that. So we got Mo in bed. The three of us took the kids to supper, did the activities, got them in bed. We got ourselves in bed. I don't know how long we'd been asleep when Ray says to me, remember, Ray's on this bunk, I'm up here. Ray whispering, he says to me, Bill, wake up, but don't move. Now, I don't know if you've ever been awoken in that fashion, but that is a difficult fashion in which to be awoken because you know that something awful is about to happen. So your body fills with adrenaline, and you want to go, wah! But you know if you go, wah, you're going to die. So I brought myself slowly to consciousness, and I said, what's the matter? And Ray said, there's a skunk in the cabin. Is it the same if I do it with this hand, or is that a whole different word? It's the same thing. Same thing, okay. Like this is skunk, and this is camel. It's not tonal. Anyway, we got to move, people. Ray says, Bill, there's a skunk in the cabin. And I looked over the edge of your bed, and sure enough, there was a skunk milling around. And somewhere in this process, Paul had woken up. Paul was on the top bunk. And Paul goes, there's a skunk in the cabin? And I'm going to tell you something about Paul. He likes to put on this persona where he's from a small Alabama town called Pensacola, Florida, and he lives in Covington, Ohio, or Covington, Kentucky, outside. He has a penthouse in New York City. He will be picked up here tomorrow in a helicopter, flown to a private airport outside of Atlanta, get on a private jet that will take him hover land on his building, where he will put on a velvet robe and sit in a hot tub of champagne, okay? He's not a country boy. So he goes, oh dear. There's a skunk in the cabin? And Ray said, yes. And then Ray said to me, Bill, shut the door. And I knew what he meant. We had that door open that went out to the main part of the cabin. We kept that open so that we could hear what noises the children were making that we were going to ignore. And I thought, well, now, wait a minute. Let the skunk go out there. Because Ray was thinking, if the skunk goes out there, it's going to go in one of those wings. One of those kids is going to see it. The kid's going to scream. The skunk's going to go off. I was thinking, out there is 100 14-year-old boys who haven't bathed in a week. How much worse can it smell? We should take the skunk and hang it like an air freshener. But Ray was like, no, we're contractually obligated to look out for the goodwill. So I sat up and I shut the door. And Paul over here has assessed the information that there's a skunk in the cabin. And he says, will it bite? Now that's the wrong question, right? If a mountain lion comes in your cabin, you're not like, am I going to get ticks? If a bear comes in... You're not worried about the smell. And Ray goes, yeah, it'll bite. And by this time, I'm laughing a little bit. And Paul goes, how did the skunk get in here? And as if to answer that question, the screen door went, and another skunk came in. So now there were two skunks milling around on the floor. And Paul says, if one of them bites me, will the other? And I'm thinking, what are they, the Borg? They have a collective intelligence, you know? And Ray goes, yes. They're like hornets. If you make one mad, you make all of them mad. And so now, again, Ray and I are starting to laugh, but it's that quiet laugh. It's that laugh you do when you're in church or you're in school or you're at a funeral, and we were trying hard, but tears were coming out of my eyes and going into my ears. And Paul was just, Paul was starting to lose it. And finally, Ray got a hold of himself, and he says to me as quietly as possible, Bill, did you brush your teeth? And I thought I knew where he was going with this, so I said no. And Paul said, oh dear. I brushed my teeth. Why is that important? I have a whole night regime that I go through with several different pastes from all over the world. And Ray says, because skunks are attracted. They're scavengers. If they smell something they're attracted to, they'll go and investigate, and they love toothpaste. He said toothpaste is their favorite thing. That's where they get the white stripe down their back. And Paul inhaled like he never intended to exhale again. He just... like that, like he was just not going to breathe out. And again, Ray and I are starting to lose it. The bed's starting to rock just a little bit on the Richter scale, and the screen door went, and a third skunk came in. So now there's 3 skunks milling around, and this entire time Mo has been conked out because of the painkillers. But Mo is like the greatest camp counselor. You're not going to believe this. You've just spent the weekend with her. She's one of those people, one of those weird people, one of those sick people who think it's neat to get up early in the morning and watch the sun rise, you know. I did not know the sun rose until I was 19 years old because all I'd ever seen it do was set. But she was great because she wakes up and, believe it or not, she's happy. She's one of those camp counselors, gets up in the morning with the sun, jumps out of bed like, good morning, has a guitar, probably a ukulele, singing songs about happy birds and little trees going chirpity chirp, chirp, chirp. So we were a great team because I'm good at night, she's good in the morning. She wakes up in the midst of all of this, and in her drug-addled state, she thought it was morning, and she said, good morning, and she jumped out of bed. And she landed in the center of a triangle of skunks. And she looked down, and with all the innocence of a drunk, she said, kitty cats. And she knelt down, and she reached out, and she started to scratch, I don't know if I can do this, she started to scratch one of the skunks between its ears, and the skunk didn't know what was happening, but it wasn't unpleasant, so it came closer. And Mo picked it up. And she stood up, and she turned, and she said, look, Paul, a kitty cat. And the skunk crawled off of Mo's hands and onto Paul's chest. And Paul sat up, and he screamed, and the skunk bit him. And then all 3 skunks just went off. And Ray and I were laying there, choking, gagging, coughing, laughing, and I heard a voice from off in the ether that said, boys, boys, boys. When a man does things purely for his own enjoyment and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be stained and tainted that others may know.
I'm just going to give you all a second. Bill is brought to us by a grant from the Nora Roberts Foundation and a generous gift from Angela and Tom Wilkerson. Coming up next, Dovie Thomason. Dovie is a true elder of the craft, and that is not an age thing at all. That is an experience thing. That is a motivation thing. She is a human of purity and passion. She is a reminder of why we do what we do here. Yeah. Dovie has got her finger squarely on the switch of what matters. And I think if you've experienced her this weekend, you already know that. Let's please welcome back to the stage one more time, Dovie Thomason.
I want my fingers firmly on the switch of whatever is Bill Lepp on the other end of it. That switch, you know it, Bill. Anyhow, I was too busy, apparently. Look what you miss about experiencing nature when you're off doing cultural things, isn't it? Darn. I don't get to have any fun at all. Well, the story I wanted to tell tonight is one of the oldest stories. It's an origin story from my mother's people, the Lakotas. And it answers an ancient question, and that question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Would you like the answer to that? Because I know it, because you've heard I'm wise. It's the egg. But it wasn't a chicken egg. They say ehane, long ago and long before. All there was stone. Stone was everything. Stone was all. Stone was complete until stone grew lonely. And stone pressed and pressed and pressed against itself, pressed and pressed and pressed until it squeezed out a companion, and that companion was known as thunder, and great was the attraction between them. And so it was decided that attraction is so great between them, should there not be another that would be between the two? Is there not a need for more than two in how we see all things? And so one of them looked at the other, and it was decided there would be a third. And so the egg came to be. How is it that this egg came to be? Do I know? Do you need to know? All we need to know is there are things of great mystery in this place of which we are a part. And Stone saw that egg and knew that soon it would be something new. And Stone did what Stone will do. Stone was patient. Thunder, not so much. Thunder waited for that egg, pushed that egg, rocked that egg, tapped that egg, thumped that egg, looked at Stone, do something, and Stone said, doing something, and was still. Thunder tapped that egg, thumped that egg, stroked that egg, pushed that egg until that egg cracked, and out of that egg stepped a being unlike any ever seen before in the world, a being that stood upright on 2 feet. And that being was wisdom. All things true and all things wise came from that one whose name became Kasa, which means wisdom. And Kasa soon walked about this world. In the world that one walked upon, many things came to be, the earth and the waters, who do not to this day get along. And Kasa walked among them, and things came and things went, and openings came in the earth, and out of those openings came buffalo, and following the buffalo were the people, the ones that looked like this first one that came from the egg. These ones came out that walked on 2 feet. And so it was our people began in this place, coming out of the earth, guided by the buffalo, following wisdom. And so Kasa used to stand among the people, and it is important to imagine what he looked like, this one. Kasa, for he was not good looking. His wisdom was his great gift to his people, not the beauty of his face. People turned to him, all the people, not just the children, all people turned to him as sunflowers turn to light. For the goodness and the truth, the wisdom, the ways of being that he brought to the people, they turned to him, and he stood in that perfect place in this new world. He stood in that place between generations. Before him, you would often see all the young of the peoples, all the generations imagined and imagining, and behind him stood all the old ones, smiling and nodding as they heard him say anything that they thought perhaps they had taught him or they had learned from him, but they all knew to be true. And so he stood in that perfect place, that place where the trunk of a tree stands, roots deep into the earth, the ancient earth, and drawing from those roots the wisdom that it would pull through its trunk and give to those next generations the blooming flowers of unknown fruit yet to come. The future, it is those ones. And so he stood in that place, and no better place to be, for it is the life of a teacher. And so standing in that place one day, he looked up, and to his surprise, he saw something he had never seen before. This is new when you are made in this world, for this world, to bring it wisdom. How can you see something you have never seen before? That is the beginning of wisdom. He thought to himself, we guess he thought those things. What we know is across the camp circle, he saw all the young women of the village, and they were moving fast. One could say running, no dignity in that, though, perhaps. They were moving quickly. They were moving as the deer will move in haste and grace, and they were carrying in their arms great gifts. He could see that the women had buffalo robes painted and embroidered with the quills of porcupines. He could see that the women were carrying jars of oils scented with all the flowers and herbs of the earth. The women were carrying eagle feathered fans. The women were carrying trays of wojapi, the berry stew of all the berries of the prairie, and wasna, the dried meat of the deer, the buffalo, mixed with the berries, the choke cherries. And so they piled all those gifts. They had jewelry and bracelets and necklaces, adornments, and they were all moving with great speed in the same direction. They were moving toward a great lodge that he had never seen before. This lodge was taller than any lodge needed to be. It was no person to live at that height that needing such a space. And it was wider than any lodge needed to be, for all your family is about you. Why would you be in such a great space, so hard to heat and control? But out of that lodge stepped a man unknown to Kasa. He looked at him, and that man had the most beautiful face. That man had a face more highly ornamented than the home in which he lived, for that lodge was painted with designs and colors you cannot describe, patterns that you cannot interpret. Great colors and shapes wove themselves around that lodge, and this man stepped out, and his face was painted, and his hair was glistening, and he was perfection. And the women were descending upon him, and they said, "Look at you. You know what would make you look better? This shirt, I made it for you last night. Go inside, put it on." And he went inside and he put it on, and he came out and he had a new shirt on, and he said, "Don't I look good?" And the women said, "Oh, you do." And another woman said, "Oh, that is fine, very good, fine, but you need a necklace or something. That is unadorned. You need something more beautiful. And here, make this for you. I made this for you. I made the beads myself. I ground them from the horns of the great buffalo himself. Put this on." And he put it around his neck. And she said, "That is very nice." And another one said, "Yes, yes, yes, but your hair, beautiful hair, your hair the color of a raven's wing, but it needs brushing, it needs smoothing." And she began to brush his hair with a porcupine brush, rubbed in those sweet-smelling oils, braided it, and then put an eagle feather into his hair just at the angle that matched his eyebrows. And he said, "I look good today, don't I?" And the women said, "Oh, you do, but you can look better." And they gave him gift after gift. He came out wearing 3, 4, how many shirts, one upon the other, necklaces hanging around his throat, bracelets up his arm, earrings. His hair dripped with sweet-smelling oils. And then he went into that lodge, exhausted, and laid down. And the women drifted away. Kasa was puzzled by this thing. All that night he was puzzled by that thing, and the next day he saw it happen again. All the young women of the village appeared to have not slept the night before, making new clothes, new jewelry, and descended upon this man who emerged from this outrageously decorated lodge, still dripping with jewelry and fine oils. And the women looked at him and said, "Still wearing that? When I made you this? Here." And he changed his shirt, and they rubbed his hair clean of those oils. They re-oiled his hair. They rebraided his hair, fresh eagle feathers. And now they fanned him with the wings of eagles and laughed at everything he said. Well, one thing that you know to be true of wisdom is wisdom always knows it is good to be curious about things it does not know. And soon as Kasa was done speaking to the young, after being surrounded by the nods and approval of the old, moved across that camp circle and stood there beside that man and waited to be acknowledged. You do not interrupt. You do not call attention to yourself. He stood there quietly, and that man did nothing. After a time, Kasa reached out and touched his elbow gently, and nothing happened. No acknowledgement, no making of relation. Nothing happened, no communication, no connection between them at all. And Kasa was puzzled, which is again a part of wisdom. So now he tapped his elbow and said, Inshka, cousin, Inshka, may I trouble you? And the man turned to him and said, huh? And Kazal said, yes, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I'm curious. You see, I've seen all the young women of the village. They are treating you in a way I have never seen them treat anyone, certainly not me. It is a thing. Why is it they come to you and gift you like this? And that man said, don't I look good today? Yes, I would say you do. That is true. You are looking very good today. And the gifts that the women give you, is that because of your looks? And that man said, huh? I don't understand quite why the women are acting this way. They have never treated me this way. The children smile at me. The old ones smile at me. But the young women have never treated me in this way that I see you being treated. Can you explain this to him? And that man said, don't I look good today? And Kazal said, I understand. I think I understand. You were telling me this is a thing that cannot be explained. I see the wisdom in that. This is a thing that must be lived. My friend, if I could have your face for one day, are you telling me I would understand? And he said, huh? You want my face? Yes, just for one day. What are you going to give me for my face? I will give you my good mind. Huh? What am I going to do with that? You will understand when you have one. Until then, give me your face. And now this was long ago when such things were easy to do, and so that trade was made. And Kasa went back to his lodge with a good-looking face and no mind at all. And that other one now had a strange face, but was full of thoughts, unknowing what they were, and went in and saw all these things and was not sure where they'd come from. Kasa went to sleep without a worry in the world and woke up and stepped outside, and all the young women of the village came running toward him and his humble lodge, and they said, why is your lodge not decorated? This needs paint, this needs patterns, this needs designs. What? You need new robes, buffalo robes. I will paint you buffalo robes, and you wear, what are you wearing? Put this on. And he pressed gifts on him, and you know what? He liked it. He liked it so much that he stood there until his hair was dripping with sweet-smelling oils. Eagle feathers at the angle of his eyebrows were tied to his hair. He was wearing beautiful clothes, eating sweet meats pressed to his lips, eating berries dripping from his chin. And he collapsed in that lodge, exhausted with all these gifts. And the next morning, he woke up, he looked around, he had no idea where any of that had come from, or what it meant, or where he was. So he stepped outside, and all the young women of the village came running toward him, and they gifted him, and they feasted him, and they oiled him, and they fanned him, and they laughed at everything he said. And so it went for 4 days, until one day he was standing there, and the women were giving him all these gifts, and he looked across the camp circle, and he saw a man with a strange-looking face, but all the young ones of the village were in front of him. All the old ones of the village circled around him. And he stood there, and their faces all turned to him as if it was the sun himself, and they the flowers needing that light. And he knew, he felt an emptiness. He felt a hunger. He felt a loss. He had no words. He had no thoughts. He had no mind at all. But he felt something was wrong. Something was gone. And he pushed his way past those women. And he went to where that one was standing there telling stories to the young, and he said, you have something that belongs to me. And that man looked at him with no small compassion and said, I have your mind. Keep the good-looking face. Our deal was for 1 day. 4 days have passed. You have made that trade, and now live with it. In years to come, that face will change. That face will age. Women will not press berries to your lips. Women will not fan you with the wings of eagles, but the children will still be looking at me, for they will be hearing the words I bring to them from the old, who stand behind me from the roots of the very earth and their ancestors. We will see. And so it was. a new one was made, an important one in all of our traditions, because Kasa was no longer wise. He needed a new name. He became Iktomi, which means spider. The earliest figure in all the stories of this northern land was Iktomi the spider, as it was in other places around the world. But Iktomi the spider was not like that boy in the red suit in the movies today. Iktomi the spider was one with no mind at all, who only felt smart when he tricked others in his webs, and making others look foolish, he felt wise. But he is not just a fool. He is not just a clown. To us, he is sacred. They say he foretold the future. They say he brought us much of spoken language. They say he named many things in the world. And that is the beginning story of us and the beginning story of Iktomi. And we have hundreds of stories of Iktomi. We must remember them, because each time he makes a mistake, there is a lesson to be learned. And we must remember those lessons, because he does not. And so that's where this story of Iktomi comes to an end. Thank you.
Dovie is brought to us by a grant from the Nora Roberts Foundation and a generous sponsorship from Gail and Greg Boots. Our next storyteller is Ray Christian. Ray comes from a place that fortunately few of us have had to experience. He's gone through a life that fewer of us could understand, and he's achieved things that so few of us can imagine. He is a self-evolved and self-made person in ways that many of us will never experience. But his stories of his life, his stories of his experience, have shared some of that darkness and a lot of that light with us this weekend, and have done something that my family refers to as moving the horizon. Living a little bit of Ray's life with him through his stories has made your world larger, and that is a gift. Please welcome to the stage, Ray Christian.
We meet again. I hardly knew who he was talking about just then. Wow. Has anybody here served in the military before? Just raise your hand. Now you can probably confirm this little fact. A lot of people don't know this. But you can't join the Army unless you have a cool name. If you come to the Army recruit and your name is like Prudus, Aloysius, or Cletus, they're going to send you right down to the Air Force recruiter, the Navy guy. We don't take them in. You probably didn't even know that. Just kind of spread that around a little bit. C. Seaman. Seaman. I just it takes a lot of skill to do this because people can be naughty. So it's not another boring military story, something to make you proud. So I was a drill sergeant in the Army, among other things, for a couple of years. And you spend a lot of hours. And we call that in the military the trail, on the trail, as a drill sergeant. A lot of hours. Now, during this time, I had a partner who was a female, and not a lot of female drill sergeants in the Army, but this one was mine. We spent a lot of hours working together. We're pretty close. I would say that she was one of my best friends in the world. And after one graduation ceremony, as is typical, we'd spend time together drinking beers, talking about the cycle, what are we going to do next year, the next time the troops come around. It was something that we always do. But I was curious, despite the fact that we had been friends for a while and spent a lot of time together, I did notice that she didn't date anybody, never seen her going out. She never invited me to her house. So I decided one day to say, hey, listen, Ronnie, how come you never invite me to your house? How come I never see you dating anybody? She said, Chris, I'm gay. Gay. Homosexual. Dyke. I just wanted to see if she could translate the words. We had spoke about it earlier. So my friend told me that she was gay. Okay, I don't care. It's not a big deal to me. But it is a big deal to some other people that she know. I remember the first time that I actually came to her house. We were sitting around, we were talking, and one of her friends showed up, and as soon as she walked in the door, she saw me, she literally had a heart attack. She grabbed my friend by the arm, Ronnie, and pulled her to the back, and I could hear her saying, "What are you doing? Why did you bring him here? Are you trying to get us all killed? You want our careers to be over? Why did you bring him here?" And Ronnie said, "Listen, Chris is cool. That's my friend. We work together. He don't care. It don't bother him. Don't worry about it." So in the weeks and months that passed, I saw an interesting assortment of people show up at the house that would make me go, "Huh? You?" But I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. My assumption is that every woman that came to that house was gay, a lesbian, a dyke. Or one, whatever the appropriate words was. That's what I thought. So after a while, they got used to me. They'd see me coming around. We would joke. We'd play around with each other. And one of the common concerns that they all had was in some of the units that they were in, the guys would be hitting on them. And it's kind of like either they could appease them or they could just blow them off. Either way, guys were still saying things like, "Well, what's your problem? Are you gay? Are you a lesbian?" And they were bothered by that. It scared them. And this is the stuff I used to hear when we would have casual conversations. They were scared about it. Some of them thought about, man, maybe I should flirt back, all kinds of things. But one thing that commonly came up all the time when we would joke about it is, "Hey, Chris, you ought to date all of us at the same time." That'd throw people's tension off, and think about what it would do to your reputation. And this is a joke that came up all the time. Until one afternoon, one of the girls came in, and she was really upset that one of the sergeants in her unit was putting a lot of pressure on her. And she was trying to consider whether or not to report him or say something to him. But this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the military was extremely homophobic. In fact, I had been in some units where they would go out of their way just to dig, to try to find somebody so they could kick them out. You had guys who spent more time looking at women to see if they were gay than actually doing their job. It became like a lot of focus of attention. So she was really upset. And in our drunkenness, I guess, we decided, let's initiate the plan. We're gonna do this thing. So the first girl, we decided to go to her unit's after party after graduation. We're wearing civilian clothes, people are drinking, and it's a place that's really public, so a lot of people would see us so we can put this thing on. Now, my girl was wearing some red high-heel shoes, but clearly she had never wore high-heel shoes before in her life. She was not a girly girl. And because she was nervous and upset a little bit, she was drinking a little bit too much. So we were sitting together trying to look like a couple. And I got up and I went to the bathroom and I heard two guys in there talking. And one of the guys said, "Do you believe this?" Like they're a couple. Who would believe that? Ooh. So I go outside and I tell her, I said, "Listen, we're going to have to up our game. People aren't buying that we're a couple. We just don't look like a couple." She had a couple more beers, and she decided to raise the level of commitment here. So she decided she was going to sit in my lap. You know, remember the kind of people around. You know, these are NCOs, officers, the people that we work with, our chain of command. So she sits in my lap. Oh, that got lots of attention. Everybody's looking. Huh? And for whatever reason, she decided to lick my face. That, so people were blown away by that. Again, a little bit of buzz around the base. Christian's dating a drill sergeant, and not a very good looking one. So, not that it mattered. The other two more girls in the group, they were already a couple, and they knew that I had to go out with them separately, not at the same time. That was the rule. We can't go out at the same time. It's not going to look like we're a couple. So I went out with one of the girls. Then the other girl showed up. And then they get into this beef in public at the NCO club. And it's like, somebody must have forgot this ain't real. And so they got into this argument. What are you doing with him? You told me this. And people see this. And the word starts getting around the base. Christian's dating 2 female drill sergeants. The dude's crazy. And the third woman, and 2 of them fighting over him. 3 female drill sergeants this guy is dating. People are starting to buzz, people are starting to wonder, and people are starting to look. Now, of all the girls, the 4th one, we probably got along the best. In fact, she looked just like me. I mean, we were the ugliest couple in the world. She had a pretty decent mustache, and that was my boy, you know. That alone made people go, no, this is not a couple at all. So what started to happen is people were saying to me individually things like, hey, guy to guy, black guy to black guy, soldier to soldier. You're not really dating them women, are you? Yes, I am. I'm actually doing that. Everybody would say, "Oh, get out of here. I don't believe it." Nobody would. There's no way you dating 4 female drill sergeants. It's impossible. You can't be that smooth. Hey, man, I don't know what to tell you. So I get this message that the command sergeant major wants to talk to me. He says that the colonel is going to talk to me. But before I go in to talk to him, he had something to say. He said, listen, before you go in to speak to the colonel, let me ask you something. You're not really dating those women, are you? Some people think that this is some type of cover. Now, let me warn you, before you go in there and talk to the colonel, you might want to think about who you're most loyal to. The Army or these things? Hey, Sergeant Major, I don't know. We just have a relationship like that. So I go in to see the colonel. He says, word is going around the base that you are showing yourself to have no discipline, no honor. You're disgraceful. You're out here with these female drill sergeants doing God knows what. You had this incident in public. It's awful. I talked to the sergeant major about it. And before we do anything, here's what I want to say to you. None of us believe that you are actually dating these women. It's more likely you're trying to cover up for some homosexuals so that they won't get discharged. Why don't you do yourself a favor? Do your career a favor, do the unit a favor, and help us put these animals out of the Army. Now, for the last time, Christian, why are you dating these women? My answer was, well, sir, I love them all. That's my story.
Oh, good sound effect. Ray is brought to us by the gift from the South Arts Foundation and a grant from my family. I saw our next storyteller for the first time a couple of years ago at the Stone Soup Storytelling Festival over in South Carolina. And she was doing things with stories that I had never seen before. The braiding of folk tales and personal narratives, revisionist folk tales, kind of the fractured fairy tale sort of thing, all mixed together in a wonderful, artful, beautiful way that just caught everyone's attention. To say that Mo Reynolds' rise has been meteoric would be wildly inaccurate. Meteors fall in flaming catastrophe. And language is important. Mo has grown through hard work and grace like magic beans thrown in fertile ground. That is Mo Reynolds. Please welcome her to the stage.
The drugs stay in for a long time. My fingers have recovered. I'd forgotten about that time we were camp counselors together. Repressed it deep, 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 deep. It is fantastic to be here with you one last time. What a wonderful story audience you've been. You know, we get up and we have the mic and we tell the stories. But the stories aren't really magic if no one's listening. And so we're really, really grateful for the energy that you give the jokes and the laughs and the stories and the movement and the emotion, and all of it has happened because of all of you. So thank you so much for being such wonderful story listeners. You know, we come to these story festivals because there's something wonderful about the opening words of Once Upon a Time. We also really love the words that come at the end. And they all lived happily ever after. But what comes after the happily ever after? Sometimes the stories leave off that part. I was sitting in my mother's garage. It was the night before I was supposed to get married. And I was sitting next to the man that I was supposed to be marrying. And I had just told him that I couldn't do it. And this wasn't just cold feet. I was not going to marry him. And I told him, it's not you, and it's not me. It was just marriage. As I've mentioned in another story, my dad left when I was 19, and I just hadn't seen a lot of evidence that marriage was very happy. It felt so big and so heavy, and I was so scared. You think she's scared? I'm scared. I'm also asleep. And I've been asleep for a really long time. I've tried waking up, honestly. Tried wriggling my toes, holding my breath. Can't seem to take a breath. So frustrating. Honestly, I'm beginning to suspect that magic is involved. But let's back up. My childhood is lovely. It could be argued that my parents were a little overprotective. Couldn't play with dogs or climb trees or even get close to pointy objects. The pointy objects thing seemed to get everyone especially riled up. I don't know why. Still, despite the lack of pointy objects, my childhood was delightful. I mean, after all, I was a princess. And I don't mean that metaphorically like all girls are princesses. No, my mum was the queen and my dad was the king. So I had my own pony, fabulous gowns, and wonderful parties for me and all of my friends. If I'd had friends. I don't remember friends. I had tutors. I had 12 tutors. And I missed them. So maybe that means we were friends. Perhaps friends were dangerous, like the pointy objects. But still, my tutors came to all of my birthday parties. The last birthday party I remember was my 16th. It was a very big deal. People came from all over, from kingdoms I never even heard of. And that made Mum and Dad very nervous, and security was crazy tight. Oh, but there was food, and there was dancing, and then all of my tutors, they dressed up, and they put on a play. And it was so funny. I laughed until I cried. It really was a wonderful party. And then it was over. Everyone said happy birthday one last time, and then they started to say goodbye. And I remember I was wearing one of my brand new dressing gowns that I'd just gotten for my birthday. And I was walking to my bedroom thinking about the delightful day. I put my hands in my pockets, and there, inside the pocket, was this long, slender box. It was tied with a purple ribbon. How clever of someone to hide a second present inside the first one. So I carried the box to my room and I sat down on my bed. I untied the purple ribbon and lifted off the lid. And there, lying on a satin cushion, was this long, slender, shiny, pointy object. I picked it up and I rolled it between my fingers. It was cold and hot, all at the same time. I pressed it to my cheek and I could feel it trembling. And I know, it sounds crazy, but I swear there were voices inside calling to me, begging me to set them free. I stretched it out in front of me and I couldn't breathe. All I could see was that glistening point. So I reached out my hand and I felt this warmth go up my arm and into my chest, and I fell back onto my soft bed and I was asleep. I am asleep, just lying here, wondering what happened to all those voices. I looked at him and I wondered what he would say. He thought for a moment and then he said, "But what about all those presents? That toaster alone is worth getting married for." Then he got serious and he said, "Look, it's taken me a long time, but I finally realized that I'm only truly happy when I'm with you. And the only way I can truly be with you forever is to get married. But let's not think about getting married. Let's just keep hanging out. Tomorrow we'll meet at the church. You'll get dressed up. I'll look amazing. It'll take like 20 minutes. And then we'll meet up with all of our family and friends, have a big party, and then, just keep hanging out." Hanging out. It took a minute to just think about that. While she's thinking about that, let me tell you what happened, what just happened. I'm awake. I woke up. And when I woke up, there was a man in my face. And I swear he had just kissed me on the mouth while I was asleep. So I punched him. And I said, "Who are you? What are you doing? I am the princess. And if my mum and dad find out, you are dead." And he said, "I know. I'm a prince. And you've been asleep for like 100 years. And I said to him, "Prove it." In my head, I was thinking, that adds up. Still, I wasn't going to let him get away with that whole kissing me while I was asleep thing. And he took a big, deep breath, and he said, "Listen, I'm happy to walk you through this. But first, no offense, might I offer you a sprig of mint?" And I said, "Thank you very much." Honestly, my tongue was like this fur cave, and my mouth is just this mossy, it was just disgusting. And I said, "Thank you." So I chewed on the mint while he tells me the whole story. Apparently, my tutors weren't tutors. They were pixies or fairies or witches or something. I was totally right about that magic thing. Anyway, all 12 of them had been invited to my christening. Well, there was this other big, powerful fairy, number 13, who hadn't been invited. Rude. And she didn't like that. And so all the other fairies were giving me really practical gifts, like straight teeth and the ability to talk to woodland animals. Fairy number 13 bursts in the door, all dramatic-like, and announces that on my 16th birthday, I'd prick my finger on a needle and drop down dead. I think she ever reacted, to be honest. I mean, it was just a christening. Anyway, after she had sufficiently ruined my life, she stormed out, and my tutor, number 12, popped up. She hadn't given me her present yet, and she wasn't as big and mighty as fairy number 13, so she couldn't reverse the spell, but she could make it so that instead of just dropping down dead, I'd fall asleep for ever. And to make sure that I wasn't lonely, she'd make it so that everybody else in the castle fell asleep too. Which I thought, oh, how nice. And how terrible, because most of the people that worked in the castle, they didn't live there, they just worked there. They had families and friends in the village, and they were supposed to just drop all of that and take a nap for 100 years to keep me company. I don't think she thought that one through to the end, to be honest. But, bless her heart, she did think about how I could wake up, and that is where the whole true love's kiss thing came in. Hang on, I said. I don't even know you, much less love you. How's that work? He said, I don't know, but I do know I'm not the first one to try. I said, that's disgusting. How many men have kissed me while I've been asleep? I'm going to need more mint. And he said, no, that's not what I meant. When you fell asleep, these huge thorns popped up all around the castle. I've heard the stories. And hundreds of princes tried to get to you, but none of them could do it. I'm the first one. I said, how'd you do it? He shrugged again. He said, they're just thorns. I just kept hacking away. I just kept at it. And I'm the only one. He was definitely growing on me by this point. But that is when we heard the voices. And not magical, pointy object voices. Real voices of real people. They were waking up. So we ran down to the throne room, and there they were. My mum and my dad, my friends. They were alive. They were awake. And so we all hugged and kissed, and we kissed and hugged, and then we all got in the queue for the chamber pots because we had been holding it for a really long time. And that is when they all saw the prince. And everyone began, oh, there he is, there's a true love, there's the one who broke the spell, yay! And my mother and father turned to him and at the exact same time said, when is the wedding? And Prince went very white. I grabbed him by the hand. I said, I got this. Hanging out. I could hang out. So we kept the toaster. We went to the church. We became husband and wife. And we've been hanging out now for over 20 years, just hacking away at thorns. I took Prince's hand. I said, Mum, Dad, we're going to wait a bit on that one. First of all, could use a toothbrush. Second, we don't really know if we're each other's true love. But I do know he's the only one that kept at it. And maybe that's all true love is. So we're going to hang out. See what happens. Kissing is nice. Kissing is very nice. But it is what you do with the thorns that creates a happily ever after. Thank you.
Mo was brought to us by a generous gift from Kathy King. Kingster is not here with us tonight. She's at home watching online, so she appreciates that. Our last storyteller, we're going to end with something that can't be followed, because that's how math works. I first saw Paul Strickland at the National Storytelling Festival a couple of years ago, and the MC that introduced him talked about how he's someone that will make you see the world at a new angle, kind of like. And that's accurate. But Paul is such an artist of language, such a craftsman of phrase and timing, that you'll be deep in the middle of an Uncle False and Ain't True story, and he'll wing a phrase out of you in nowhere that'll knock your head straight and change the way you walk the earth. Welcome to the stage, Paul Strickland.
Tom should start just touring as an MC at other festivals. That's just incredible. Just incredible. Oh dear. Going last at a festival that has been this delightful, the only thing that I can do is to encourage you to create this kind of community in other parts of your life. A lot of times at the end of these festivals, we do this thing where we say, yeah, storytelling festivals bring people together, and isn't that wonderful? And it is. So let's do more of it. Find a way to do it in other parts of your life. This is special, and you can take this into other things. The story I want to leave you with is an old story. It's not as old as wisdom, but it's an old story. And when I tell it, it is called Whale Song Ice. And before I tell it, I just want to thank the 91 of you that are here for this final performance. My great-grandmother, as opposed to the three less remarkable ones, my great-grandmother died years before the date of my birth, so it was an excused absence, but that's not the point. The point is that she lived a long time ago. People have children very late in life in my family. Okay, so a long time ago is when she lived. If you said the word portfolio to my great-grandmother, she'd assume you talk about a seaside town with a harbor. Portfolio. If you said the word internet to my great-grandmother, she'd assume you talk about what fish should do in a town called Portfolio. So in order to tell this story, I'm actually going to need y'all's help. We only have 10 minutes here, so. On cue, I'm going to ask you all to make the sound of whale song together. It's going to go like this. Ready? I'll conduct you. Because, ooh. All right, let's try it again. Ready? Okay. Yeah, this is going to go well. My great-grandmother lived a long time ago, thousands of miles north of anywhere reasonable, in a town called Portfolio. Portfolio was the kind of town that was so cold it was on the side of the ocean, and the ocean often froze. And my great-grandmother had this incredible skill, this intuition, this ability to find whale song frozen in the ice. Do you understand? The whales would swim by, they would sing the whale song, and it was so cold that the ice would freeze around the whale song and capture it like the world's coolest recording. My great-grandmother could find this whale song frozen in the ice. I imagine that she would swathe herself in leather and fur, and she would walk out onto a piece of ice where she thought that it was right there. She had an axe, she had a leather bag, and she would chop the ice up into chunks and then take the ice home to test it for whale song. Now, how do you test ice for whale song? It's actually just a lot like life. You just have to be willing to lose a little bit of it to find out if it's worth anything at all. She would take a piece of ice, she would take a stethoscope, heated over a candle flame, and then she would touch it. And the moment she heard those beautiful bellowed tones, she would immediately take that piece of ice and shove it down into a bucket filled with snow to stop it from melting. Now, the obvious question here is, what would one do with whale song ice? This is a long time ago, friends. This is when people were real resourceful. There were lots of uses for whale song ice. I mean, for example, rich folk, their bathrooms back then were attached to their homes. Most of us, though, our bathrooms were detached from our homes. But the problem with having your bathroom attached to your house was that soundproofing had not been invented yet. So if you had a fancy dinner party or something, you would definitely want to throw some whale song ice in the toilet to, let's say, artfully drown out some sound. Or like during tourist season, my she'd call over a tourist, and then she'd ask for their hand, and she would take their hand. She'd take a sliver of whale song ice, and she'd place it on their palm, and their body heat would melt the ice and release a little bit of that whale song, and my great-grandmother would listen dramatically. It says, always burn incense as opposed to nonsense. And that was worth like $1, which was a lot of money back in that time. But the real important use of whale song ice was a ritual in the village. When the elders were on their deathbeds, they wanted their last breaths to be accompanied by the sounds of whale song. So for years and years, you'd put them on a raft and you'd send them out into the ocean to die. But with the advent of whale song ice, daughters and sons, nieces and nephews, friends and loved ones could hold a piece of whale song ice next to someone's ear as they were drawing their last breaths. And the sound of that whale song would accompany their last breaths and grant them their final wish. Thing was, my great-grandmother mined the very last piece of whale song ice ever found 5 years before her death. Because what happened was impurities in the ocean water began to mount up. And when those impurities in that ocean water mounted up, when it froze, all those impurities were in there. And it became impossible for ice to hold something as delicate and beautiful as whale song. So my great-grandmother, who provided so many people with that beautiful solace, with that last moment, she provided that ritual for so many people. She was not going to get to take part in that ritual. And on her deathbed, the night of her death, she was lying there surrounded by so many friends and family in her cabin. She was a beloved woman. She was surrounded by all of these friends and family. And when she thought it was time for her last breath, she sat up and pointed at the door. And everyone left, one by one, walking out into the cold night to leave her there alone, listening to every one of her last breaths. Because you never know which one is going to be the last one, do you? She knew her last breaths would never be accompanied by the sound of whale song. She knew her last breaths would be accompanied by nothing. But then she heard it. Because the people of Portfolio surrounded my great-grandmother's cabin that night. And all night long in shifts, they sang the sound of whale song into the night, determined that my great-grandmother would in fact get her final wish, that her last breaths would in fact be accompanied by whale song.
Because it turns out, friends, when a community of people put their minds to it, we can do things we don't even think are possible anymore. Yeah, and I bet it didn't sound anything like Real Whale Song. But in 91 distinct, individual, important ways, it was probably even better. A seesaw all by itself is a sit-sat. A staring contest in a mirror, no one wins that for sure. One time I tried to give myself a back rub. I ended up way sorer after than I was before. 'Cause we need each other. We need each other to make it further than we can on our own. We need each other. We need each other. Without each other, we are all alone. A picture don't paint 1,000 words if no one sees it. But if you fall down in the forest and no one hears it, guess what? You still fell. We need each other, people. That's the secret. But a secret's not much of a secret, is it? If there's no one not to tell. We need each other. We need each other to make it further than we can on our own. We need each other. We need each other. 'Cause without each other, we are all alone. This is not a song about romance. It's not a song about loneliness or not loving yourself. It's about how there's no such thing as story without listening. And there's no such thing as listening without someone else. We need each other. We need each other to make it further than we can on our own. We need each other. We need each other. Without each other, we are all alone. Thank you for listening.
One more hand for all our storytellers, please. And our gifted sign language interpreters. Now, I mentioned that this festival is run by volunteers, our army of good eggs. And we have a board that oversees things and makes decisions and does planning, but our number one super supreme crown-wearing good egg is Dr. Amanda Lawrence.
I didn't pay him to say that. So my lovely husband has just given me what every spouse dreams of, the last word. So usually I give this final speech with Ruth Looper. She was my partner in Word Joy. We ran the festival together for 10 years. And Ruthie would always shove me out front to give the speech, and then she would stand right there and blurt out comments as I was talking. Those of you who knew Ruth knew that she was a world-class blurter. So I'm imagining Ruthie having all kinds of things to say tonight. I'm going to keep it simple. Keep it simple. To our tellers, thank you for the gift of your stories, for enabling us to live in them with you during these precious spots of time. To our audience here and at home, thank you for the gift of your presence. As Paul said, we need each other. Right? The stories take space, or they take place in that space between the teller and the listener. You are an important part of every story. To our interpreters, thank you for the gift of accessibility. That matters. To our grantors and our sponsors, you make it possible. And last but not least, to our 65 green-shirted volunteers, you are the heroes of this weekend's story. So thank you all for coming to Georgia Mountain Storytelling Festival number 11, and we hope to see you back for number 12. Thank you.